Welcome to Pulp Era Story Reviews Episode 8. Today we're going to be looking at the April 1933 issue of Doc Savage magazine, which includes the story Land of Terror. Now, Doc Savage is considered by many to be the very first superhero. His background is this. He was raised by his father and a cadre of scientists to be trained to be the perfect man. By the time he was an adult, he was a skilled surgeon and he was a master of many other scientific disciplines, and he was also trained to physical perfection. And he was called the Man of Bronze because of his sun-bronzed skin. Now, after his father was murdered, he dedicated his life to fighting evil wherever he could find it. Now, to help him accomplish this mission were Doc's 5 closest friends. There's Ham Brooks, the dapper lawyer who always carries a sword cane. Rennie Renwick, the engineer with very large fists who enjoys punching holes in doors in his free time. Electrical expert Long Tom. Archaeologist Johnny Littlejohn. And the ape-like but brilliant chemical genius Monk. And in each story, this group would travel to all sorts of exotic locations to do battle with a variety of criminals and mad scientists and other bad guys. Now, Doc typically carried an assortment of gadgets with him. He'd have pellets that were filled with knockout gas. He had miniature bombs. He had oxygen pills that allowed you to breathe underwater for a short period of time. His men carried these super submachine guns that Doc had invented that could be loaded with all sorts of ammunition, including mercy bullets that would just knock the bad guys out. And that was the thing about Doc. At least eventually, his character evolved into someone who would not kill even the worst of the bad guys unless he was absolutely forced to. But the first few stories he was in, he was a little more ruthless. His reluctance to kill is something that came a little bit later as the character developed. And Land of Terror is actually the second Doc Savage story that was published. And you notice when you're reading this that he's pretty casual about simply breaking the neck of a bad guy when he catches him. Later on, he'll take them alive and he'll send them off to this secret medical institute he has where they'll have brain surgery done that will take away all their criminal tendencies, because ethical considerations in Doc Savage's universe were apparently much simpler than they are in real life. The villains he fought often had a science fiction influence to them. One bad guy, for instance, had a ray that would disintegrate any sort of metal. In the story we're going to look at, Doc and his men are going to stumble across a remote island that has dinosaurs living on it, which is always an awesome idea. Anytime you can shove a island or valley or underground world or whatever full of dinosaurs into a story, then that's a good thing, because dinosaurs always make everything better. Now here, by the way, are 2 different covers for Land of Terror. The one on the left is the original magazine cover with art by Walter Baumhofer, and the one on the right is a paperback cover done years later when the story was reprinted by James Bama. Now, getting into the story itself, it begins when a chemist who's in fear of his life after an assassination attempt contacts Doc for help. But the chemist is murdered before Doc can get to him. The thugs who kill him use a mysterious gray gas to disintegrate the body. Now, Doc manages to catch the thugs and kill them, but he still doesn't know for sure what's going on. So he and his men investigate. Soon they learn that a criminal known only as Carr, K-A-R, has obtained a supply of the smoke of eternity, which can disintegrate almost anything. Now, the chemist was killed because he knew too much about the gas, and possibly because he knew Carr's true identity, which is a mystery through most of the story. Now, there occurs a quick succession of violent encounters with Carr's minions. Monk is kidnapped, and he's hidden aboard a submersible barge, which itself is underneath an old pirate ship that's supposed to be a museum, but is in reality part of Carr's hideout. Now, Doc manages to rescue Monk, and there's an attempt to use the gas to rob a bank, but that's foiled. And finally, Carr's supply of the gas is destroyed. But Carr is still on the loose, and he's still unidentified. Now, Doc has learned that the mineral needed to manufacture the gas is located only on a remote Pacific island. Now, Doc and his men fly there. They're hoping to head off Carr's probable attempt to get this mineral. But when they get there, the plane's attacked by a pterodactyl, and they're all forced to bail out. And the island, it turns out, is inhabited by prehistoric creatures. And for a while, the adventurers are kept busy just staying one jump ahead of hungry tyrannosaurs and other monsters. But Carr's men are also on the island, and Doc's companions end up getting captured. Now, fortunately, by now, Doc has deduced who Carr really is, which helps him get the upper hand on the bad guys. He rescues his men, and Carr meets his grisly end in the jaws of a giant carnosaur. Now, this is a great story from start to finish. It's very well written, has absurd from a real life perspective, as all the various elements are. Everything in it makes perfect sense according to the logic of the universe in which Doc Savage lives. It's a great, internally consistent story, and the action scenes are wonderful. Lester Dent knew how to write great fight scenes. He knew how to generate suspense, and he knew how to generate excitement. And he did that all through his career as a pulp writer, and it's most notable, I think, in the Doc Savage stories. And so I would recommend Land of Terror as a great Doc Savage novel. It's actually one of my favorites. I admit it's in part one of my favorites because it has dinosaurs in it. And dinosaurs always make everything better. Just most stories that exist would be better if you stuck a dinosaur into it. Just to take an example at random, how much better would Gone with the Wind have been if that annoying Scarlett O'Hara had been eaten by velociraptors in the first reel? It would have been a much better movie. So anyway, that's it for now. I would like to say that a lot of my narration was taken from the Encyclopedia Britannica entry on Doc Savage, which I helped write, or taken from my first book, Storytelling in the Pulps, Comics, and Radio, which is still available to buy via Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble or other online booksellers. So hopefully I will be back with another video review soon. In the meantime, you can visit me at my blog, comics, old time radio, and other cool stuff.